Well, hello and good evening. It is a joy to be with all of you again, and welcome to Monday Night in Prophecy, a program that, as I always say, has gone for over 18 years, and we deal with biblical prophecy. Many of you might not be aware that the Bible contains about 1/3 of prophecy. So there's an amazing amount of prophecy in the Bible. Some of it has been passed. For instance, the prophecies about the first coming of Christ are part of that. But there's so much more. And it's not just the second coming, but what leads up to the second coming. And that's what's so interesting for our times, because we live in those days where we see those things come up and line up exactly the way the Bible says they would. We find ourselves in those days, in those times, and that's why we know we are close to the second coming, or to be more exact, to the rapture of the church. And that's what we'll be talking about. What has happened in last month, the month of January, and we'll go through those as they relate to the coming of the Lord, end time signs, as we find it in Scripture. That's what we want to know. Last time I didn't quite get done with December, so what I want to do is I want to talk about this first slide from Thursday the 30th of December. And the United Nations has a new Guardian of Peace statue that has traits that resemble the beasts described in Daniel. And so isn't it amazing what you find on this slide, this animal with wings that resembles some of the Daniel's biblical prophetic statues. A statue with biblical implications was erected outside the United Nations headquarters in New York City. The statue, entitled "The Guardian of International Peace and Security," is situated on the Visitors Plaza outside UN headquarters. According to the UN, the Guardian is a fusion of jaguar and eagle. But what does it remind us of? And that's what this next slide is all about, because it says, and when they say peace and what? Safety. And that's out of 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3, where it actually says this: while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly as a labor pains on the pregnant woman, and they will not escape. And so what it is telling us, that people will cry out, peace, peace, safety, safety. And yet the Bible says there will be no safety. In fact, destruction is coming at them. You know, years ago, I was mentioning another statue over in Europe, and that's what it looks like. It is at the EU headquarters in Brussels, Belgium. The European Union, at their headquarters, put up this statue of a woman riding the beast. And isn't it amazing? Another biblical statue right there in front, but it's not a good one. In fact, in Revelation 17:7 it says, "Then the angel said to me, why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns." That's what the Bible has to say. It is a mystery. It is something terrible that is coming upon the European continent. They even printed out those coins with a woman riding the beast in euros, as you know, they use all over Europe. In connection with that picture, there was another one, and that's the EU Parliament building in Strasbourg, France. And what did they do there? Well, they built the building like the Tower of Babel. There's a painting by the painter named Bruegel, and this picture that you see there actually hangs in a museum in Vienna. But they build it accordingly so that it looks like the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel stands for what? For shaking the fist into God's face. That's what the Tower of Babel stands for. And so that's what they put up in the European headquarters in the Parliament building in Strasbourg, France. That tells us something about the attitude of the rulers of Europe. So that was just kind of an introduction, something that I would have liked to add it last month, but didn't get to. So the part one, as we always do, is what does the Bible teach? And we always take one topic, and right now we are in a series of the timing of the rapture. So that's what we will continue. The timing of the rapture. The case for the pre-tribulation rapture, reason number 8. So we've been in there for a few weeks. God's instructions for the Jews through the tribulation period. I'm going to take you to a very unusual passage. It's a passage in the Old Testament, Isaiah 26, verse 20 and 21, where it says, "Go, my people, enter your rooms, and shut the doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until his wrath has passed by. See, the Lord is coming out of his dwelling to what? To punish the people of the earth for their sins." So what is he telling us here? He's telling my people, those are the Israelites, that at a certain point you need to leave and you need to hide so that you wait for, and we know how long, 3.5 years, for the wrath of God to pass by. So that they, the Jews, even though they are in unbelief, will be protected. The 7 years of tribulation, and we know that they are the first 3.5 years, and they are the consequences of mankind's sinfulness. That's the first part of the tribulation. The second part of the tribulation, the 3.5 years, that is God's full wrath upon the earth. It's also called the Great Tribulation by Jesus himself in Matthew 24:21. They too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and the Lamb. It'll be a horrible time. A time when the Bible says it never has been like that before and never will be again. Worse than any of the wars of history. It is Jesus in Matthew 24 verse 15 through 18 who says, "So, when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea, what? Flee to the mountains." That's the point. He's saying to the Jews, when that happens, that statue is in the temple. That's the point for you to get out. Not out of Dodge, out of Jerusalem, and down into the wilderness, the mountains. And he continues and says, "Flee to the mountains, let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak." That's how quick you have to leave, Jews. Why? Because Antichrist will slaughter any Jew that he can get his hands on. And so if you're not out, you're dead. That's how serious this is. Now Jesus was referring to Daniel 9 verse 27, which says this: "He," which refers to Antichrist, "will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation." A statue maybe of himself, maybe of some false god, whatever that terrible thing will be, that will bring shame and dishonor. And then when that happens, the Jews need to leave. And he tells them fairly specific. He says, Jesus tells the Jews to escape to the mountains. But where is their protection? Where is the water? for hundreds of thousands of Jews? Well, the most likely place for that is in Jordan, the country of Jordan, by the name of Petra, the city of Petra. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, we read this. The woman, now this is referring to Israel. The woman Israel was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time. With other words, 3.5 years out of the serpent's reach, taken care of by God Himself. That's in store for Israel throughout the great tribulation that will be all around the globe, coming down on the Gentiles. Now, what is this Petra? Well, it's a city. It's a city hewn in stone by some ancient people and now completely left and empty. It's a tourist place. That's all it is. In the future, look at that narrow entrance. That's the only way in and out. And then look at into the stone, all those rooms, all those homes chiseled for tens of thousands of people. There is another picture of some of the temples and the buildings, incredibly done, that will house the Jews under God's protection, under His umbrella for 3.5 years. And that's where many of them, maybe most of them, maybe all of them, will find Jesus as their Messiah. It has room for hundreds of thousands. There are springs and rainwater collecting available and supernatural protection by God. It only makes sense that if God protects the Jews who are in unbelief, He will remove born-again Christians throughout the tribulation period. Remember that God has now given the work of the evangelists. And who is that? That's us. That's now. That's the Christian Gentiles. And Christians, even Jews too. We are now the evangelists. We are the ones that pass on the message, the good news to people while there's still time. But those evangelists will be replaced with 144,000 Jewish missionaries. Because the work of the Christian missionaries is over. When? It's over because they're gone, they're raptured. That's why the Gentile Christians, or all Christians, are gone at that point. And so God has something else in place, 144,000 Jews. And with that, we are turning to part 2. What is happening in the world? We're living in the end times. We're experiencing birth pains, as Matthew 24:8 says. It's happening, and it's happening now. It's happening month after month, and we're getting closer by the day to that glorious day of the rapture. So, we start with Saturday, the 1st of January 2022. The headlines, Witchcraft for Kids. What? A new toy called Magic Mixies. Magical Misting Cauldron is a stuffed animal with a gimmick attached. Promotional copy encourages kids to mix your portion and make you your pet. The interactive toy comes with a plastic cauldron, magical ingredients, and a book of spells that help children create their stuffed animal from scratch. The item was selling out nationwide, with resellers offering Magic Mixies for exorbitant prices days before Christmas. What are we doing to our children? We show them, we play with them magic and magic spells that they now pronounce over their doll and their stuffed animal or whatever. We're getting them used to magic, which is satanic. And yet, parents do it unknowingly of what they're really doing. Let's go on. Sunday, the 2nd of January 2022. winter storms in Israel. Very unusual, but yes, there are winter storms in Israel, and there's a short clip that I'd like you to see right now.
Winter storm Carmel buffeted Israel with heavy rains, blustery winds and cold temperatures for a second day Tuesday, flooding roads and causing damage across the country. At the same time, the weather system subsided somewhat a day after it blew into the region and wreaked severe damage.
And here's another picture of those winter storms. Now let's go on to Tuesday, the 4th of January 2022. What is the next step in the Abraham Accords? What's going to happen next? Well, there are some movements with different parts of the world and countries that are interested in joining. And so there is a clip that I'd like you to see right now.
Just in here in Israel, it seems contacts have been made in efforts to secure additional normalization deals between Israel and other nations more than a year after the signing of the historic Abraham Accords. Washington announcing the groundbreaking agreement in late 2020 under the Trump administration, with initial deals between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, and later additional deals with Morocco and Sudan. Now, a high-ranking Israeli foreign ministry official has confirmed that contacts have been made between Israel and Indonesia. The official saying the goal is to normalize ties with Jakarta, adding this will be a long process. The official also confirming long-term goals include possible normalization with Saudi Arabia, the Comores, the Maldives, Kuwait, and Qatar. So for more insight, our diplomatic correspondent Eli Hochenberg is here in studio. So there isn't a lot of detail at this stage, Eli, on this development, but contacts between Jerusalem and Jakarta would be a significant breakthrough if it were to progress down the line to something concrete. Break down what it means.
Absolutely, it will be meaningful. We've been long talking about the potential next country to join the historic, groundbreaking Abraham Accords, in Indonesia. Definitely is one of those names that many here in Jerusalem have been waiting to see how things will progress with it.
Well, that's quite interesting. We'll have to watch and see who is next to join in to the Abraham Accords. Let's go on to Wednesday, the 5th of January. Egypt was supposed to purchase Sukhoi 35 fighter jets from Russia. The deal was cancelled, and those who will receive these planes are now the Iranians, along with a 20-year defense pact. So you will help us defend Iran, Russia, and we buy those 35 fighter jets from you. And those 35 fighter jets, as you see on the next slide here, the model that the Iranians will get is a 4th generation fighter jet comparable to Western fighter jets. So they want to even out the playing field. And so, you know, the F-35s that the Israelis have, well, here is our version, the Russian version of that. And so, Iranians, I want you to have 35 of those to be able to fight fairly. That's what's happening. And Israel knows about that. And right now, those Iranian pilots are getting trained in Russia for those planes. I don't know how long Israel is going to wait, but there will be a point where the waiting is going to be over and an attack is coming. Let's go on to Friday, the 7th of January. Israeli drone attacks Iranian oil tanker. You know, out in the Iranian Gulf, also the Red Sea, there are attacks back and forth. The Iranians attacking Israeli ships or ships that are friendly to Israel, and then Israel attacks back. And destroy some of the Iranian ships. So go ahead and watch this video of one of those Iranian ships.
Israeli drone bypassed Russian electronic warfare and strike on an Iranian tanker. The Israeli military managed to blow up an Iranian oil tanker despite the protection of the Russian military. Despite the fact that Russian forces have deployed several of the world's most powerful electronic suppression and countermeasures on the territory of Tartus, not to mention the presence of Russian short-dash, medium and long-range air defense systems here, as well as escorting Iranian oil tankers near the Syrian coast by Russian military ships, it became known that an unknown Israeli drone, allegedly small in size, was able to freely bypass the entire Russian defense of the Syrian coast and
it's quite amazing what the Israelis are doing right under the nose of the Russians, isn't it? It's their technology and their advanced technology that they are using in warfare. We're going on to Saturday the 8th of January. New Canadian law will officially describe parts of the Bible as myth. With the passage of Bill C-4, there is a great deal of concern among Canadian churches. The Trudeau government put a law on the books that effectively criminalizes Christianity. And so don't you dare talk about certain topics because they are on the list of myth. It's a myth. It's not true. And you can't talk about it, not even in church. And if you do, you are a criminal. That's how far we are. This is in Canada. How long will it take till it comes right here into the United States? You see what's happening? More and more, we're getting squeezed into the mold of the world by force, whether we want to or not. And if we don't, we are the criminals. And we will have to suffer for it. Let's go on to Sunday the 9th of January. Muslim kindergarten graduation celebrating in the West Bank. That's Judea and Samaria. They're celebrating their graduation on a kindergarten level. And I want you to see what that looks like.
أنا الأقصى، أنا قلب فلسطين النابض، أبحث عن معين، فأين السلاطين؟ أين العرب؟ أين الغضب؟ وأنا أرى اليوم عجب، صمت ولهو وطرب، إن صمتكم أشد خطرا علي من الأنفاق التي تحتي، ولولا صمتكم ما تجرأ الاحتلال على تدنيسي واقتحامي.
أبي استشهد في الأقصى، أخي جرح في الأقصى، وأمي تعرضت للضرب في الأقصى، ونحن نمنع من دخول الأقصى، ولكن لن نتخلى عن الأقصى، لن نتخلى عن الأقصى. يا عالم هذا تصريح إن الأقصى وما بنزيح، يا عالم هذا تصريح إن الأقصى وما بنزيح، عنه لو مليون جريح أو نستشهد ملايين.
احنا الحراس والأساس، والمجد فينا بيرفع الراس، ونضحي لآخر أنفاس، والقدس مش للبيع، عمر لحد ما يضيع ما يضيع.
Isn't it unbelievable? No wonder those kindergarten children come out totally brainwashed, totally influenced against Israel, against the Jew, and they are the bad ones and they do everything wrong. And yet it's happening every day. Well, let's go on to Tuesday, the 11th of January. Another big earthquake, 6.4 earthquake near Cyprus, back on the 11th. And this is happening more and more frequently. Large earthquakes that are happening. Now, as long as they are in the sea, in the ocean, like this one here, near Cyprus, there's not so much damage. But if they are on land, watch out. It's major. Let's go on to Wednesday, the 12th of January. The airlift from Iran to Syria continues, and the pace picks up. This morning too, an Iranian Air Force cargo plane makes its way from Iran to Syria. This is the 6th plane since the beginning of the new year. And so more and more of those Iranian cargo planes are flying into Syria and unloading their military load that they brought in, because that's all it is, one after another. Why? In preparation for the attack on Israel. That's what it's all about. That's why Israel wants to always wipe them out. But I'll tell you in just a little bit why this is getting harder and harder to do. Let's go to Monday the 17th of January. The Houthis of Yemen attack the United Arab Emirates city of Abu Dhabi. Now this is a first. That's an enlargement of the war. That wasn't before. But Amir Tsafati will explain to us what that is all about. Please watch.
Multiple ballistic missiles and suicide drones. May there over 20 drones and at least 10 ballistic missiles made their way from Yemen to hit Abu Dhabi's oil depot. It's a special industrial area that houses a lot of companies. Oil tankers on the seaport. Airports were targeted. By far the most comprehensive strike on the UAE soil ever. Ladies and gentlemen, the UAE has been officially added to the equation right now. It's no longer that the Yemenites are attacking Saudis only. Make no mistake, the Houthis are all sent. They're the proxy of Iran. Iran is attacking UAE via its long arms from Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen. That's how they do things. They don't do it themselves. They rather have their attack dogs do their job. Now watch this. Major damage in the UAE. Major damage, multiple casualties. Most of them are foreign workers. See, in the UAE, 85%, I think, or more of the residents there are not Arabs. They're not Emirati citizens. We're talking about Pakistanis and Indians that died in this attack. Just an hour ago, the Saudi-led coalition with UAE aircrafts, F-16s and F-15s, striked some key headquarters of the Houthis in Sana'a, Yemen. And over there, there are many more casualties, many more casualties. Some of them are maybe top commanders of the Houthis. And the Houthis just said that a revenge is about to come. In other words, they ratchet up their game now, and it's no longer shooting at Saudi Arabia. Now the UAE has become the new member of the war in the Arabian Peninsula.
It is certainly ratcheting up, isn't it? It is definitely getting worse by the day. Look at Wednesday, the 20th of January. What happened? Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi was in Moscow on Wednesday to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin about security, economic and trade relations in the region. What do you mean by security? Oh, you want the Russians to help you against Israel. That's part of that contract with the 35 jets. I see. So, Russia, you're obligated to help Iran against Israel. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound maybe like Ezekiel 38 and 39 coming up? Let's go on. Friday the 21st. A joint naval exercise of Iran, Russia, and China began today in the Indian Ocean. Cooperation, Russia, Iran. Very important. It's happening right in front of our eyes. We're going on to Saturday the 22nd of January. The second tallest building in Israel will bear a distinct resemblance to artistic depictions of the Tower of Babel built to challenge heaven. Tel Aviv, that's the sin city of Israel, planning to build also a Tower of Babel, also shaking the fist in God's face. You need to know Tel Aviv is mainly secular. The Jews, they're Jews, but they're secular Jews. And they don't live by the Jewish law, or rules, or anything else. They live by their desires, by their flesh. And so, why not build a Tower of Babel? Right? Let's go on to Sunday, the 23rd. U.S. Navy. We intercepted in the Sea of Oman a ship carrying 40 tons of explosives after sailing from Iran towards Yemen. Close to the Strait of Hormuz, which is that choking point that Iran could switch down anytime it wants to, shut off all the ships that come through this canal. Right there, the Americans got a ship again. That's not the first time. 40 tons of explosives. Where does it go? To Yemen. Where in Yemen? To the Houthis. The Houthis are the ones that are fighting against both Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries. Monday, the 24th of January. The ongoing conflict that are happening in the Middle East, as explained to us again by Amir Tsafati. Let's go ahead and listen.
There is an ongoing war in the Syrian city of Al-Hasakah, where there is a prison of ISIS people. The prison was taken over by ISIS terrorists who 2 days ago had a takeover of the prison. There's about 400 children in that prison. Hundreds of people died already, but that's not the breaking news. This is nothing. The breaking news, folks, is that a drone attack just took place where in Iran. Kermanshah is the area where there's some nuclear facilities. There's a missile airbase of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Tak el-Bustan is the area, it's District 7, Kermanshah. Apparently, there are some casualties. We know that ambulances are on their way to their area. Air defense system has been activated there. A strike within Iran in the last few minutes. These are the breaking news. Apart from that, the Houthis fired a ballistic missile to Jizan, the Jizan industrial zone in Saudi Arabia. There are casualties there. And apart from that, a war is going on in the Syrian city, the northeastern city of Al-Hasakah, which is in the Kurdish control area. The Kurds, backed by the Americans. ISIS terrorists took over a prison where ISIS prisoners are being held. They executed hundreds of prison wards. there. And then nobody knows what to do, because if you're going to bomb it, you're going to kill 400 children that are trapped in it.
Amazing developments in the Middle East, aren't they? But that's not all. Listen to this. Tuesday the 25th. NATO allies sent military equipment to Eastern Europe. That's the conflict with Russia there. NATO announces that members of the alliance are putting forces on standby as a deterrent to Russia and deploying fighter jets and military equipment into East Europe. Denmark sending a frigate to the Baltic Sea and is set to deploy 4 F-16 fighter jets to Lithuania. Spain sending ships to NATO naval forces and is considering sending fighter jets to Bulgaria. France ready to send troops to Romania. Netherlands sending 2 F-35 fighters aircrafts to Bulgaria and is offering a ship and land-based equipment to NATO's response force. US considering increasing its presence in Eastern Europe as well. It's heating up. We're getting close. What is going to happen? In the meantime, in Israel, in the Middle East, look at what Russia is doing. On our next slide, we read Russian Defense Ministry reports. Russian and Syrian fighter jets toured the Syrian border for the first time, including the Golan Heights border areas. So now the Syrian jets and the Russian jets are flying together. And where are they flying? Well, you see it on the picture. You have Israel, you see the Sea of Galilee there, you see the Golan Heights, and then you see a strip called the Syrian Golan Heights. And that narrow strip is where the Russian jets, fighter jets, are flying, patrolling every day now. So it is much harder now for Israel to fly into Syria to destroy Iranian military machinery. Much harder. They're still doing it. It just got much harder. Let's go to Wednesday the 26th. Israel gearing up to evacuate 75,000 Ukrainian Jews as Ukraine-Russia tensions rise. Israel is preparing for what may become its largest airlift in 30 years. Security Council and the Jewish Agency gathered to discuss the threat level faced by Ukraine Jewish communities. And so Israel is responding to the Ukraine-Russian conflict that could explode at any time. Maybe by the time you see this video, it has already exploded. We do not know. The next slide has to do Thursday the 27th. Anti-Semitic incidents in France increased by 75% last year in 21. 75% increase. No wonder the French Jews are leaving in droves back to Israel. Why? Peace and safety. They feel that in Israel there's peace and safety, but not in France, and not in many other European countries, including Germany. Constantly, Jews are being attacked. Now this is happening on the same day. Russia posts patrols at Latakia, the second impediment to Israel's airstrikes over Syria. The Russian army posted military police force at Syria's Latakia port on the Mediterranean. Why? That's where many of the ships from Iran come in with military equipment. You remember last month there were 3 huge explosions right there, and I'll show you here is the port. That's what it looks like. And 3 of those large containers exploded with explosives inside. What happened? Well, Israel was able to smuggle through the Russian defense the bombs to the drones with bombs to drop on those very three places, and they burned. Precision bombing. But now the Russians have now their guards there as well, which means it is harder yet for the Israelis to find and destroy those things, those Iranian military equipment that they are gathering together for the war against Israel. What is happening though is that nobody really knows about it. On the ground, Israelis are in Syria seeking out places and destroying it from within. Kind of what they're doing in Iran too. You know, in Iran, all of a sudden, boom, something goes up, boom, something goes up over here, and everybody says, well, what's happening? How is this happening? Well, Israeli Mossad, that's the secret police of Israel, very, very highly skilled, goes in there, and now also into Syria, and blows up the things that need to be blown up. That's what's happening. Friday, the 28th of January, there's just a little layout of the Russian and the Ukraine completed military preparation. They're there, they're built up, and you can see that they are about equal in manpower, but much stronger, the Russians, in their equipment, even though so many European countries have sent some equipment over there. The Russians are far superior, so there's no question about it. If they do attack, that they can take as much or as little of the Ukraine as they want. At a price, much blood is going to be shed, and Putin knows that. And so as of today, the taping day, last day of the month, it's still quiet. The war hasn't started as of today. Let me just add something there again. You know, the Russians, it took them weeks to bring all the war material down from Siberia. And they're sitting down there now in the south, not all that far away from Israel. Not all that far away to an area that will need the Russians to attack together with Iran. And so I'm wondering, is there a possibility that all of this is just fluff when it's really going to happen just a little bit south of there? It would only take them a few days to get there from where their local place, their location is right now. Here is one more that I want to show you. It is a video about their newest revelation of military equipment from Israel. What are they doing in Israel? I want you to watch this little clip.
Does the tank still have a role on the modern battlefield? Slow and vulnerable to air power and guided missiles, armored vehicles are sometimes dubbed metal coffins by soldiers. But what if you could take the soldier out of the tank?
Robotic combat vehicle. So they need to also understand that the first line of attack will probably not be a human line. It will probably be autonomous systems which are driven according to those specific rules of engagement and autonomous mission control that we will give them.
Autonomous armored vehicles were the hot topic at this year's International Armored Vehicle Symposium in London. How important is man or machine on the modern battlefield? And Israeli defense giant Rafael is in on the action, revealing Israel's first vehicle-based artificial intelligence.
In the last vehicle that we developed, we had 3 crew member, 2 human crew member and 1 robotic crew member. And we figure out when we test the vehicle that as more as the situation is chaotic and complicated, most of the tasks are being handled by the autonomous robot and not by the human beings.
Rafael's advanced vehicular integrated combat system is a fusion of battlefield sensors and automated systems that can react faster than human beings. It integrates a vehicle's defense and weapons and can take over combat tasks that are delegated to it.
Younger soldiers today are much more used to video gaming and other attributes, and they are very, very oriented to already work with systems. So when they sat down and the situation started getting more complicated, they just gave more commands to the system. Do this and this and this and this for me.
It's the latest in a battlefield trend. More automation, fewer people in the line of fire. While a human being still makes the decision to fire and selects the target, the idea is to have fewer people inside the tanks until they can be replaced entirely.
I spent 30 years myself as a tanker. I am a former chief of armor of the IDF. And I know exactly how I wished for many situations to have those capabilities.
And in a world where air power and scouting has largely been delegated to drones, the steel behemoths of the last century are set to follow too.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? Tanks that are robots, that are directed somewhere else with a joystick in some bunker, fighting in the front. No person around. That's the future of warfare, and Israel is right on the cutting edge, and they know how to develop those things and put them to use. All right, I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of the Middle East. And so you see on this first picture the Middle East. This is Saudi Arabia, that large country, and Iran, this large country, and Turkey, this large country. And you can hardly even see Israel as this tiny little place. But there is something important down in Yemen. And in Yemen, and it's over to the west, you have the Houthis. And the Houthis are doing what? Well, they are attacking Saudi Arabia. Why are they attacking Saudi Arabia? Because Saudi Arabia works together with Israel, gets their technology, their help against the enemy. And so the Houthis are bombing Saudi Arabia. What does Saudi Arabia do? Bombs the Houthis. And so while this is going on, something new started. As we heard from Amir Tsafati, they are now going to the United Arab Emirates. And so they are attacking there. And they had killed already some people, and they're very nervous over there right now. What do? They shoot back on the Houthis and try to destroy their capabilities. Where do that capabilities come from? Well, it comes from right there where you see that yellow arrow, right from Iran, right to the Houthis. And that's what the Americans and other nations are trying to stop. Those ships that bring all this equipment to make it possible for the Houthis to shoot. So where is the problem? Iran. That's where it originates. They can't wait to wipe out Israel as they proclaim. But that's a different story, because as you look, Israel is this tiny little country on the far side over next to the Mediterranean Ocean. But weapon-wise, they are far ahead of Iranians. So here's this tiny little country called Israel, and that's really what it's all about. It's about Israel. In fact, let me show you another map here of Israel, because right there in the middle you see Jerusalem. Can you make that out? That little country, that little city of Jerusalem. And there's Jerusalem, and it's blown up, and it's not really about so much about Israel, and it's not really so much about Jerusalem. It is about this little place called the Old City, and on the place of the Old City there is a 35-acre lot where the temple used to stand. The first temple, the second temple. Where the third temple, that's Antichrist's temple, is going to stand. And more importantly, that's where the fourth temple is going to stand. In fact, one day, the Millennial Temple complex will look something like that. I think it'll look a lot better than that. This is an artist's impression of what that will look like. Now, superimposed on the land, you see here, if you look close enough, the brown old wall around the temple. And then in the center, it almost fills up this whole area in the center, the temple. And then you see the outer walls, which go way out into this old city. That's where the fourth Jewish temple will sit. And that's significant, because it is that temple that we will go to. It is that temple in Jerusalem where Jesus will rule and reign for 1,000 years. It is that temple that has the old wall around it, but one day it'll have the new temple of Jesus sitting right there in the middle. In between the 1,000-year reign and where we are today, there is a block of 7 years. It is the 7 years of Antichrist. It is the 7 years of tribulation. It is the 7 years of horrible, horrible time like never before, where God's wrath will be poured out on the world. Where we're with Jesus. We're snatched up in a twinkling of an eye. At any moment, with any warning, no more sign has to come. The signs that we find in Scripture have to do with the second coming of Christ. And that is at the end of the 7 years. But you and I, if you're born again, and I trust and hope you are, you will be snatched up. And I will be snatched up. And all believers around the world, in a split second, will be out of here. Where will we be? In front of Jesus, worshiping Him. I think we'll be on the floor like the 24 elders, worshiping our Lord, our King, our Master, because it's all because of Him and His love towards us and His payment on the cross to forgive your and my sin. And that's why we can stand in the face of Jesus, because we are paid for by Christ. And that's what this program is all about. As we lead up to it step by step by step, and it's like, it's got to happen soon. So much is happening. And then a month goes by and I say, oh my goodness, all the stuff that has happened again. And I report. And I will do that as long as God gives me the strength. Thank you for watching. Lord bless. Until next month, if there is a next month, may God bless you. Bye-bye.